Call this meeting to order at City of Rhinelander Common Council meeting November 8th, 2021. The meeting agenda has been posted and the media has been notified. Please call roll.
Christopher Fredrickson.
Here.
Thomas Barnett.
Here.
Andrew Larson.
Here.
Carrie Michalowski.
Here.
Thomas Kelly.
Here.
Gerald Anderson. Here. David Holt.
Here.
Eileen Daniel.
Here.
Ryan Rossing.
And before we take anything a step further, we have a gentleman in the audience that is hard of hearing. So please get close to your mics and speak into your mics as clear as possible. So that way all intended messaging can be taken care of that way. Please stand. Did we get any public comments? All right, did any of the alderpersons receive any public comments this last week or two? No, all right, skipping that. On the mayor's comments, we have a proclamation that I will read. And then also real quick, on behalf of our council president, his absence, he will or could be joining us via Zoom again as he's at the police station up in Eagle River. But this would be one of the last times that way, as he was promoted to detective last January. He finally gets to fill that daytime job. So he's back to where he was in the beginning, which is good for him. We really appreciate that. But anyway, the proclamation. In 2023 U.S. Deaf Golf Course Championships, whereas July 19th through the 13th of 2023 and the 2023 U.S. Deaf Golf Course Championship will be held in Rhinelander at Northwood Golf Course. The City of Rhinelander, along with the surrounding communities, are honored to hold this event. And whereas Rhinelander is proud to showcase the magnificent, well-maintained golf course to commemorate this occasion. And whereas, with the issuing of this proclamation, asks the Rhinelander community to embrace and welcome this event and take the opportunity to show all attendees what Rhinelander and the surrounding area has to offer beyond the event. Therefore, now I, Chris Fredrickson, Mayor of Rhinelander, by the power vested in me, do hereby proclaim Sunday, July 9th through Thursday, July 13th, 2023 as U.S. Deaf Golf Championship Week, and ask our citizens to give support and encourage all citizens to consider sharing your gifts, whether they're monetary and or in the form of volunteer, to this fun event. Thank you. Meeting minutes.
Like to make a motion?
Go ahead, click here. Sorry. Ooh. Oh, sorry.
Daniel, make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from October 25th, 2021 as submitted.
Hold. Second.
We have a motion, seriously, and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Reports to the boards, commissions, and committees.
Anderson, I move approval of, that we receive the reports of the Police and Fire Commission for July 15th, September 16th, September 29th, October 5th, October 7th, October 15th, and October 19th, 2021.
Holt. Second.
With the motion and a second, with that, I would like to welcome our new chief. Go ahead and stand up as you can see the progress. Welcome. He's the process with that. But anyway, moving on. Gerald?
I had a question, or at least this series of minutes and things seems to illustrate that the commission feels they have some difficulty communicating with the council and the administration. And it seems like the minutes are not the best way to do that, especially if we don't get them for months later. I just wondered what is the appropriate way for them to come and address their concerns with us?
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly, they're a separate independent entity once they're appointed, and they're really supposed to maintain distance from the city council. They're not really supposed to interact with the council because that really despoils the concept between a city council, which is elected officials, and what is supposed to be an independent agency that is supposed to preserve non-political, with the little p, not the big P, non-political environment with the city. And you're supposed to separate. That's why they were created in the first instance. So it would be inappropriate for Police and Fire Commission members or their board to come to the city council or vice versa, unless they had a specific purpose that related to a budgetary item or something. But you have to understand that the state of Wisconsin is one of the few states that has this independent. This was done during the progressive era. That's why you remember, and we kind of laughed about the fact that there's supposed to be equal number of Democrats and Republicans. So you're supposed to declare in order to be on. And if you read the state statutes, that's specifically what it says. And they're not supposed to have interaction with the council, and there's not supposed to be council members on the Police and Fire Commission. If you want to see a classic example, just go to Milwaukee and watch how far apart the two of them are, as far as what the council wants and what the Police and Fire Commission wants. They've been in the news a lot by because they're disparate bodies. They're not the same bodies. So in that sense, I don't know what you mean by a lack of communication, because there shouldn't be any communication. I can't think of a topic that they, as a Police and Fire Commission, should be bringing to the council. The council sets, for example, the policy with regard to how many officers there should be and how much money should be spent, whereas the Police and Fire Commission is supposed to make sure there's no graft and corruption in the hiring of the candidates. They're supposed to be independent of any political sense or politicking, and that's why you have different entities. So I think unless we change from a legislative point of view, not us, the state of Wisconsin, I think that keeping those two entities apart is really a good idea.
The concerns that I read in there had to do with being clear what positions they were supposed to be working on for hiring, and what appropriate salaries were going to be, and things like that. So it seemed like there was a failure of communication to them on that.
But they shouldn't be concerned with salaries, and that's not their role. Their role is to make sure that they're hiring candidates that are qualified. Those candidates then would go to the city to negotiate their salary, and if they don't like their salary, they go somewhere else. They should not be, the Police and Fire Commission should not be in there saying, we need to pay this guy $100,000 or $300,000. That's not Police and Fire Commission. They're supposed to say, this is the best candidate for the position. Now, we've done our job. We found you the best candidate. Now you keep him if you want to pay him more or pay him less. They do not decide salary, and they should not decide salary. That's your role. That's this role.
Seems hard to advertise for a position without saying something about salary.
No, you set the salary. You set the salary for the chief. You set the salary for the officers. That's part of your budgetary process.
Well, so do they do the advertising, or does somebody in administration do the advertising and they only look at the candidates?
I'm going to tell you one of the things that happened in this last year or whatever is we hired HR. HR's job is to take on some of those roles for the city that then would take it off a duty that I would say they inherited certain duties over the test of time that weren't really in their purview and or otherwise, that now as we figure out where those really belong, and we know from state statute and from our legal, this is where they belong and this is what moves on with that. Some of that is just a historical perception of what happens and then what needs to happen.
Yeah, they could certainly come back and say, we can't find any candidates because the city hasn't put enough money in the coffers for it. That kind of a overall generic would be fine, but to try to tell you what the salary should be or what it's at, that's not really their role. That's your role. You know, that's just, because you're elected, they're not elected. They're just supposed to be neutrals. They're not supposed to be, you know, so you try to get rid of, the whole purpose was to get rid of graft and corruption. That's why police and fire commissions were created. Because what was happening is the mayor would get his best friend and make him the police, you know, the chief of police. And if you vote for me and you give enough my election, I'll make you a sergeant. Well, that's gone now.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Ordinance, second reading. Discuss and approve the ordinance 21-14, amending 2.0101 to elected officials aldermanic districts. This is a second hearing, so I will ask if anybody in the gallery would like to speak. Due to the fact that it's a second hearing, I ask 3 times. It's what I have to do. Does anybody in the gallery want to speak? And for the 3rd time, does anybody in the gallery want to speak on this issue? That being the case, it is closed, and I will take a motion.
Holt, I will make a motion to approve ordinance 2021-14, amending 2.01.01, parent 2, elected officials, aldermanic districts.
Larson, second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, motion carries. Unfinished business from previous council meetings. Discuss action items. Discuss update the federal and state grant applications. This is Zach's.
So as previously shared with you, the grant application and the procedures for applying for 2 grants, both the tourism grant as well as the neighborhood investment grant, both of those items are due this week. They extended the deadline, thankfully, on the neighborhood investment grant to give some additional time to all the applicants out there. The neighborhood investment grant is a minimum of $1 million, and as was previously stated, they're hoping to make, there's 200 million, available in that program, so conceivably they could make as many as 200 awards around the state. The feedback that we've received in the period of time since the council is that park type applications, recreational type of applications seem to be the most viable unless there's a shovel-ready housing project that could be applied for. And given the council's already considered TIF assistance for the Riverview Estates project, we could apply on that project's behalf. However, we've already granted $1 million, or could be granting as much as $1.2 million in TIF assistance. The alternative would be to substitute that, though in this instance, if we have another need, it makes sense to apply for the other need, which in this case, we've got the Hodag Park Master Plan. And while we don't have the completed grant application, but because we've got the master plan and it's basically shovel ready, that's really the qualifying criteria. That seems to be the most obvious and logical application. So that's our plan, is to proceed with the council's decision to adopt the master plan and subsequent. We'll have to determine phases, obviously, but I think the most obvious would be if we're doing the stage, the pavilion next to it with the restroom facilities. A lot of the users in the park talk about storage needs. With the trails already being funded with the CDBG grant, and then with some of the piers, we could do piers and parking lot and some of those other amenities. So that's kind of the general plan at this point in time, is to apply for $1 million to support the master plan development, and leaving it open-ended enough for us to be able to have some further discussions about the implementation should we become successful and awarded the $1 million. The second grant is the tourism grant, which has a smattering of tourism-related or tourism applications that we're hoping to apply for the golf course Heel Creek area, as really developing further the recreational amenities, both with improvements at the clubhouse, which I think are going to be dubbing as a trailhead building. So it's not just serving the golf users that are currently using it, but golf and other park users ultimately in the future. So trail development, we don't have a total budget on that yet, but essentially getting us kind of the first round of stimulus, if you will, to get trails developed there. Jeremy and I went out there this afternoon, took advantage of a great moment before council. It's incredible. I think if you can get out there at some point and just see what's going to be a really emerging vision for bringing a multitude of outdoor activities to that area, it's really, really exciting. And so I think this grant opportunity, if we can, spin it appropriately and tell the right story, will be successful in potentially in receiving some form of funds. There was no minimum, if I recall, in the grant, so they could award as few as $25,000 or something. But there's $10 million available in that fund, and then there's a third one that we're going to be preparing for in January. But that's really the update. I just wanted to bring that up to your all attention. And if there's concerns or questions or feedback on that, feel free to either now or after the meeting or between the deadlines of Thursday and Friday for those two programs.
I guess at this point, as the mayor, I'd like to thank the council for being proactive with some of these things, such as the housing study, the hotel study, the parks plans, to be proactive and be ready for those shovel-ready projects. So then it makes sense to do a grant application. Before, you're just kind of shaking dice. Now you're at least, you have one leaded dice. We're moving in the right direction that way to be prepared. If nothing else, moving on. Introduction to new business. Discuss and approve the 2022 shared ride taxi operating contract with Running Inc.
Barnett, I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 shared ride taxi operating contract with Running Inc.
Daniel, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? And we'll start out with Barnett. He had his
Are there any changes from the original contract to this contract?
So if you remember, it was a 5-year agreement with actually 1-year increments. So it's a 1 year, and then there's the 3 and then the 2-year extension kind of deal. So, but we do have to contract annually with them, but no, substantially it's the same. We did talk about potentially looking at the fare aspect of this as it pertains to the local cost share. And we're going to look at more information through the full calendar year before we recommend any fare adjustment. If you recall, in the June-July timeframe, we adopted an agency fare, which was for contracted service providers, Inclusa, and those types of organizations now having to pay an agency fare. So we haven't seen that reporting fully fleshed out in our numbers yet. So we want to get more.
Is the Tavern League still?
As far as we know, the voucher and Safe Ride program is operating as it should. We haven't heard that they've discontinued any relationship. I mean, we obviously licensed some additional providers. I'm unsure if they're using, the shared ride program with the for-profit vendors, but at least for the city's shared ride service, it's still operating. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, we had a lot of conversation about that heading into the new year. And I would say Running is very forward with communication, and their reporting is pretty robust. I know Wendy gets more of the reports than I do, but on the occasion that I do get them quarterly, the reporting is pretty nice to see.
Gerald?
Yeah, my question pertained to rates. I've heard that they're now charging $7 to go to the airport, where it used to be $4 or $5. And I'm just wondering how that's determined and what they're actually doing in that regard.
No, they should be still the flat rate fare. We set the rates, so any of those still have to come through a resolution of the council. So I would be surprised to hear that would be true. I could see maybe one of the for-profit providers charging that. Now, if they originate outside the city, I know we've had some discussions with them about transferring to, in the case of Print Pack, the route takes you outside the city limits, but so clients that are looking to take jobs there, I've had some calls on that. But again, the origination and destination should be the determination. However, we've had some clarification, but the rate, the rates are the rate. That's either flat rate or whichever tier they're in, and then per mile if they're outside the city limits. That's the fare that the council set, right? So if that's the case, if there's an agency that's sending a fare or a passenger to the airport, they would be paying that agency fare. But I think the majority, maybe Carrie knows the answer to this, the majority of the clients that are using agency fares are being paid for by a federal subsidy, Medicare, Medicaid, whoever their benefits administrator is. Yeah.
Eileen? No? Oh, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Discuss and approve accessible vans lease agreement with Running Inc.
Dan, you make a motion to accept the 2022 City of Rhinelander Accessible Vans Lease Agreement with Running Inc.
Michalowski, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Discuss and approve the resolution 2021-30-2022 budget resolution.
Barnett, for the sake of discussion, I make a motion to approve resolution 2021-30-2022 budget resolution.
Anderson, second.
We have a motion and a second. And discussion.
So, I had spoke with Zach earlier today, and I told him there's some stuff with the golf course that I was questioning on the budget, and I just wanted to make double sure that passing the budget as is in no way a contractual continuation with management of the Green Golf Pros, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, this is purely the budgetary aspect of it. The contractual management, the discussions that we're having kind of outside of that are purely separate from the budget process.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear.
And any amendment would still come through the form of a budget amendment, some of the budget amendments we've done in the past.
Any further discussion? Gerald?
Okay, and we got multiple pages here spelling out all kinds of different parts of the budget. In my conversation with Wendy, I believe I understand that what we're approving really is just these 2 pages that we have in the packet. And all the details are for informational guidance, but we're not bound to those as a council, other than the totals.
Right. Yeah, statutorily, this is the format that the budget gets adopted at the council level. Any deviations in the various funds would still require, in the thing that I had just referenced, the budget amendment tool. But right, this is the way the auditors view our budgetary process, and I don't know if Wendy has another way to explain it, but that would be how I would express the grand totals at which the council adopts the budget. And this is what's been published in the newspaper as for the budget. So any taxing authority, school district, county, that would be the same mechanism in which they adopt their budgets.
I did have one more question, which came out of the Police and Fire Commission minutes, where they spoke about taking some recruitment expenses or interview expenses out of their budget. And I couldn't find any budget in here for the Police and Fire Commission. And I just wondered where that shows up, and I suppose Planning Commission as well.
Yeah, all those are contained within the mayor council budgets. So there's one that says mayor, council, and committees. I think there's a page in there. I actually didn't bring my paper copy, but thank you. Wendy. They unfortunately don't have page numbers, but if you look.
Yeah.
There are some expenses that were for recruitment for the fire that came out of the fire budget. Right. Because fire, police, and inspection are on a different summary line that you approve, and then they flow through onto our reporting as a separate category than the general fund.
So if you were to look under fire, for example, there's recruitment as a 195 is the last 3 numbers of that particular one. But in terms of their per diem and everything, that comes out of the committee's board's budget.
And that shows somewhere under mayor and council?
Yeah.
Yeah. City council and committees/boards.
Yep.
but there's nothing designated specifically for that commission. Is that right?
Correct, yeah, you don't adopt a budget by the commissions or the boards, right?
Okay,
Or the
just
committees.
curious.
Sure.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Resolution carries. Discuss and approve bills and claims in the amount of $2,154,852.67.
Holt, I will make a motion to pay the bills in the amount of $2,154,852.67.
Daniel, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please call roll.
Andrew Larson.
Aye.
Thomas Kelly.
Aye.
Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
Thomas Barnett.
Aye.
Gerald Anderson. Carrie Mikulowski.
Aye.
Ryan Rossing. David Holt.
Aye.
As we talked about.
Motion carries. Oops. Motion carries. We're going to pay our bills this month. Discuss and approve the title of Human Resource Generalist to Human Resource Manager in the org chart.
So on page 29 in your packets, as has been discussed, the last time we brought forth the first change, I believe in at least 5 years that the city had formally adopted the organizational chart of the city, we had previously titled the new human resources position Human Resources Generalist. And after some reflection as well as some consideration around the modernization of titles and sort of the evolution of authority as it relates to the various titles associated with those positions, the decision's been made to offer a recommendation to the council to retitle that position. We've been recruiting for it, and as of last week, are in the process of negotiating an offer with a finalist, and would like to button up this part of the process. The manager position offers much more, based upon the alignment with the authority and decision making that person has. A manager title is more appropriate than the generalist. And I would offer an update too. I'll take questions if there is any on that. And then the point about the city engineer. The city engineer position was also retitled and created earlier this year when we last brought this back in, looks like in May and June. Unfortunately, to date, our candidate pool for the city engineers is non-existent. We haven't had any applicants, any qualified applicants for the position. And so over the coming weeks, we're going to be giving more consideration to bringing forward potentially another revision to that. We haven't landed exactly on a point of what that would be, but given this is a living and breathing document, it should be reflective of our operations, and that's why I'm bringing forward the changes to you tonight.
Gerald?
I'm still not clear whether a generalist is a higher or lower position than a manager.
Yeah.
And what does this manager manage?
Sure. So it's above. It would be a kind of a rank above the generalist, but generalists generally don't have authority in decision-making process. So, while I would be making the final decisions that they would be advising, there are issues such as FMLA administration and others that they are making on a day-to-day basis that doesn't require my consensus because purely they're operational in nature. So that the duties are managing the comings and goings of HR, right? So they don't have any personnel direct reports, and we don't foresee any in the near future. But based upon the workload in that, and then the latitude at which they need to be making decisions, it really is a manager position instead of a generalist.
How does that affect the salary?
It does affect the salary, and in the new, now that we've got the adopted budget, in the 2022 scales that we adopt every year in December, you'll see the regrading of that position. It's a grade above, I believe, what the generalist was. I'm just going to clarify that. I do have that handy. Yeah, that is accurate.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wait a minute, was there a motion made? Nobody made a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
You betcha.
And I don't think so either now that you say it.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the retitling of Human Resources Generalist to Human Resources Manager in the organizational chart for the city of Rhinelander.
Mikulowski, second.
We have a motion, a second. For clarity, we were moving way too smooth for this to happen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. The organizational chart is changed. Next, discuss and approve Timber Drive construction plans at the intersection analysis at Timber and Coolidge.
Mark's making his way to the front, but it's to the point in the development of the Timber Drive construction plans, and obviously the council had pursued the intersection analysis at Timber and Coolidge, of which is also in your packets. Given the design is really based upon city and state engineering spec, there's not much to discuss as it relates to discretionary design elements, but Mark can talk through the most recent open house we had, as well as the conclusion of the analysis.
I'll go through the analysis first. So SRF is a consulting firm that went through and did the traffic analysis per the council's request to look at signal lighting at the intersection of Timber and Coolidge. They went through the standard traffic signal warrants, and they found that there were no warrants for signal lighting at that intersection. That's the gist of the analysis. They gave two options. One was to leave the intersection as is. The other would be to set it up for traffic signal lighting in the future, in case that intersection did warrant that in the future with traffic volumes. And the change that would be made to accommodate that would be adding a dedicated left turn lane on the northbound lane of Coolidge. I have not discussed that with Zach or staff at this time, so that may be something that we may be pursuing with the Timber Drive project. Real quickly, I'm going to go through, we did have a public information meeting last Wednesday. We had a pretty good showing. Just around 30 people were there. We had made the rounds prior to the meeting, and we talked to some residents and business owners along Timber Drive and tried to address some of the questions that they had prior to the meeting. There were a lot of good questions at the meeting, a lot of curious people, a lot of positive comments about the bike path itself and Timber Drive construction. For the council's benefit, I'm just going to quickly go through the anticipated construction of Timber Drive. So what we're looking at is removing and replacing all curb and gutter from Stevens Street all the way to the bypass. Along with that, we are going to be doing a full depth pulverizing of the asphalt pavement. The existing base course material will remain there. This is not a full reconstruct. A full reconstruct would necessitate removing the existing base course, putting new base course in. We had done some soil borings a couple years ago and found the existing base course was in good condition. So we're going to pulverize that, reshape it, and pave it. One of the concerns with Timber Drive is the deterioration based on poor drainage. Part of that is it does not have a crown. Usually the center of the road is a little higher so the water can get to the gutter. That road is basically flat. So part of this pulverizing operation would be to reshape that, put in a distinct crown and pave it so the water can make it to the curb. Other drainage issues that accompany Timber Drive is a lack of storm sewer. There are some intersections where it could use some more storm sewer. The curb and gutter is relatively flat. There's not a lot we can do that with the pulverizing project, but we are going to try to address that as best we can, and part of that is adding storm sewer in there. So there is a rural section of Timber Drive. By rural, I mean by Timber Heights, there is no curb and gutter. We're going to build road through that section, add curb and gutter. Also in that section, there's no sidewalk on that north side. We'll be adding sidewalk on the north side. So when the project's complete, you're going to have curb and gutter from Stevens Street to the bypass, sidewalk along all that north side. There's also a bike path planned, again, from Stevens to the bypass. The majority of that is off-road, meaning it's much like Stevens Street, north of Dwight. We have 8-foot wide asphalt paved bike path. separate from the roadway. We are not able to do that in that first block from Stevens to Pelham because we don't have the right of way to put that in. So that'll be an on-road bike path at that point. From Pelham to the bypass is going to be off-road. That terrace area, the green space in between the curb and the bike path is going to vary anywhere from 0 to 7 feet. Ideally, we'd have a nice 7-foot green space where you could put trees and snow storage. We can't really accommodate that because of steep driveways and just how we need to tie in there. So we are going to have to bump that path a little towards the curb in some areas. With that, we're going to have some retaining walls that need to be put in. We've talked to those residents. They're aware of that. I would like to point out also the Timber Drive right now is 44 feet wide. We're going to narrow Timber Drive. Everybody that's driven down Timber Drive knows that it's is it a 4-lane road? Is it a 2-lane road? You don't really know. Narrowing of that will help that, and it'll help reduce speeds as well. And that moving the curb and gutter is going to come from the south side, so that'll also relieve some of the impact to the south side residents with the bike path being put in. So that, in a nutshell, is the Timber Drive project. Anybody have any questions?
I do.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I know it's not specifically timber, but are there any future plans in the next few years to work on Iverson, on either part of it?
There is a plan, Iverson Acacia to the dead end. I think that is on 22, possibly the potential mill and overlay or a chip seal of that portion. On the north end of Iverson, there's no plans to my knowledge, and Dan may be able to address that.
Okay, thanks.
With their study, would it be different if the store at the end of the road was open versus just now?
It may be different, and they actually made a statement in that study that industry-wide, we're not sure if we're through all the impacts of COVID. COVID may still be impacting traffic volume, so it could be the store, it could be, once Farm and Fleet gets in there, that certainly could impact that. That may be a reason to set it up for signalized intersection and do another study in a couple of years and see what those effects are.
Gerald.
Did you get much objection from people about having the bike path go across their front yards?
There were some, yeah, which is typical. I mean, you'd put in a bike path or sidewalk, there's going to be objections. The bike path is all within city right away, but these people still maintain that frontage, and they consider it their front yard. So we're going to try to reduce the amount of impact as best possible to accommodate them. Yeah, but there were some concern, and I think we have addressed it. For the most part, people were in favor of the bike path and anticipating it.
Thank you. All right. Moving forward. Monthly reports from departments. You will find these in your packet.
Holt, I will make a motion to accept the monthly reports from departments as presented.
Larson, second.
All right. I'm going to take the vote, but then I'm going to open up just for another introduction. So all those in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to use this part of the agenda to welcome Brian. I'd like you to stand up to the mic and give us a little brief history about yourself and anything interesting. And sorry, I wasn't going to try to pronounce your last name when I had you stand up before. I'm like, no, never mind.
It's Tanankor. So it's French Canadian. It's like encore. That's how I like to tell people. But Brian Tanankor, I hail from Cornell, Wisconsin. That's where I grew up, born and raised. Entered the Air Force after that for 14 years into public service, Deputy State Fire Marshal, Assistant Fire Chief, Milwaukee County Fire Department. And then that brings me to here. So about 23 years in the fire service. And my wife and kids are still down in Waukesha. They'll be moving up here after the school year is over. I have an 18-year-old son who is graduating this year, so I want to let him finish his school career there. And I have a 12-year-old daughter. She's in 6th grade, so she's real thrilled about moving right now. But yeah, I'd be remiss if I don't mention and thank Josh Schmitz and Dan Bauer and Jim Platts for filling in without a chief being there. The way they filled in was admirable and commendable. So if you see them around, give them a thanks. They handled themselves well and make sure that the services were never impacted without a chief here. So I appreciate them, all three of them, and then the department as a whole.
Thank you, and once again, welcome to the city of Rhinelander. All right, that brings us to the future agenda items. Does anybody have anything they want to add? If not, they can get a hold of Teresa, Zach, or myself, and we will put them on the next agenda. With that, we are adjourned.